Hello, I'm Linda Ann Smith at Studio ABC. I'm a video creator for Paverpol at paverpolusa.com. Join me in my studio to see how I make three-dimensional art with this amazing product. Opulent Grace is the second in a series of tributes to women rather than to any deity. I'm working on with Paverpol. I'll be using the light skin color Paverpol as well as the transparent. I'm reusing the same mask that I used for the first Paverpol goddess, and I covered the eyes this time with some masking tape. I just happened to have the decorative masking tape laying around, and you see on both sides she's covered here, and I felt like the plastic that I covered it with last time kept the features from being as prominent as they could. So this time I'm going to cover it with aluminum foil to pop so that I can pop it off of the mask later. So I'd like to get as much mileage out of this little Hobby Lobby mask as I can. Not buying extra supplies is always an addition to the studio. So every penny I save on reusing things means that I can buy quality materials to make my artwork. You see the tray here that I'm working on top of that's already covered with aluminum foil, and I discovered that it didn't really stick to that very much. It was very easy to peel off of the aluminum foil while it was still leathery hard. So I'm thinking that this will work and I'll be able to pop this off of the mask also. If the Paverpol should happen to adhere to the aluminum foil, it won't be a problem because it'll be on the inside of the mask. I'm going to try working with the light skin tone Paverpol today. This is the transparent. I'll also be using that color. I want to remind you that the reason I'm using a tray to place it on top of is because when it's wet, it's flexible, and I want to be able to pick it up easily to transport it outdoors. This is my container of light skin color Paverpol, and so I'll open this up and I will stir it up really well to make sure that all the colors distributed well and everything's mixed up and ready to go. I'm going to be working with smaller pieces of fabric this time. I'm working with my muslin again first on the face. This is unbleached muslin. And I'll put this in the Paverpol in a little bowl because these are small pieces of fabric and I think I'll be able to manipulate it inside of a bowl. You can see what a very light color this is, but it is a flesh tone. So when I get through here, I will start to dip in some of my muslin pieces and place it across the face. You want to make sure that your fabric is completely saturated. For that reason, I still like using my brush to push that product down into the fabric. Also, natural fabrics work better than man-made fabrics. Natural fabrics absorb water or anything better than like a polyester would. I don't want this process to become monotonous. It's really fun to do, but it might be a little monotonous to watch. So I'll speed up the camera as I finish the face and you can watch. Now I'll switch to the transparent Paverpol. Okay, I'm applying this to a synthetic fabric, and as I told you, it doesn't work as well on synthetic fabrics. I think this is probably a blend of a natural fabric and a synthetic fabric. It was an old scarf that I picked up at a thrift store for practically nothing, and it's sequined on one side, down the sides of it. You're going to see that I accordion fold this. If you've ever done wallpaper, I'm giving away my age. If you've ever done wallpaper, then you accordion pleat it, and because it may not fit on your table when you're gluing it or watering it down, and you let it set a little while. But the accordion pleats, when you get it to the wall, you can pull those out. I'm doing the same thing with this very long piece of fabric. I begin to work this through and drape it just like I think I want it, but sometimes as we work, it doesn't exactly work out exactly the way we want it. And when I started to add another piece later, I discovered that it would look better if I had another piece under this one. The nice thing about that, what I'm telling you, is you have some working time, open time with Paverpol. The old scarf that I'm making this from had some large areas that did not have sequins on it, and some areas that did have sequins down the side of it. So I decided I wanted the sequins in the front, but I wanted more draping. So later I decided to take this off. Got it all arranged just like I thought I wanted it, and decided to take it off. So here I am with the plain piece of fabric, and I'm moving things around, still kind of thinking, oh, I can drape this under it. But in the end, I ended up taking off the first layer and doing it the correct way. I'm showing you all this because I want you to see the process of the way I do things. It doesn't all come just like step by step for me. It's trial and error. I play with it until I see what works for me. So you see this little scarf that doesn't have any sequins on it. I'm putting the Paverpol on it with a brush again, and accordion folding it back and forth so that it's easy to work with since it's such a very long piece. Here I am draping the second piece of fabric, and it becomes more and more obvious to me that this is not the design that I want. I want this non-sequined piece underneath, but I had to play with it for a while before I knew that that's where I needed to go. And once I made that decision and figured it out, it was a whole lot easier than trying to make this work. I just pulled it off, started over, and you see there's Paverpol already there on the face. Makes it easy to stick, to adhere, and I don't want quite as much fabric at the top of her head. I end up pulling that in later. I'll put this outdoors near a sunny spot to dry for a few hours, and then I'll bring it in to dry overnight. There are places on her that are still leather hard instead of being kind of rock hard, and that's fine because she'll continue to dry. Actually, most of my pieces have continued to dry for a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks at times. I'm going to go ahead and work with her. She's ready, and I'm going to work on doing some painting to the face because I think that I have a paint that will make her skin look more dewy, like real skin. I'm not really going for reality, but I think that this Silks Acrylic Glaze in the, let me see what color this is. It is iridescent gold, and that's going to bring some beauty to that skin color. It'll let the Paverpol skin color show through, but still give it a gold sheen to it, which is fitting for a goddess. So one of the things that you should do whenever you're using silks is put out on a piece of some kind of a palette or something. You need to put the silks out on that so that you're not dipping back into this and exposing it to air, because you can see when you open it up, it's a wide mouth, so that exposes it to a lot of air and it starts drying. Also, if you put a wet brush in this, the water actually can start it drying. Did you know that? That's something that I keep telling people in many of the videos because a lot of people don't realize this. I didn't realize it for many years. Okay, so I'm going to put some out to the side over here, and then I'll get started working. And this looks white on my brush, but you're going to see, I just think she's so interesting. But you're going to see as I brush it on, and as it begins to dry, that it has gold tones in it, the gold mica in it. And this may bring out all the imperfections of where I laid one piece of fabric on top of another piece of fabric, but that's okay with me. Sometimes it's the imperfections of a handmade work that give it life and interest. A lot of times you get, people will give you various advice on your art about what they think it ought to look like or what it ought to do, what you ought to put here or what you ought to put there. And I usually have my own ideas about what I want, but and a piece of advice that I received on this one I'm definitely taking, because I was talking about painting the face with a bit of, I don't know, tribal type of designs. She's not Native American for sure, but I was thinking that I could, well, you know, she might be Native American. She might be a goddess of Native America. Who can say? Look how much better that looks. I just really like the way that gold's bringing out, and yet you can see through it because it's a glaze. You can see through it to see the skin tone of the Paverpol. But this gives it a little more, a lot more luminescence, like healthy skin. Let me get it down into all the little cracks here. Just kind of pushing it in with my brush. I got it on there, but when it dries, it's going to be fine. And I also want some colors up and down the scarf here and there. So for that, I'm using Vivids. The advice I'm going to take is, why not a tear? And I think a tear right in this area would be very telling and storytelling. These are super high metallic. In fact, they're called Ultra-Metallics. And again, I'm going to lay out what I think I'm going to need. And these are beautiful, beautiful paints. I'm not going to wash my brush from the silks glazes. That's okay. The colors will blend. It's kind of a yellowish green, and on top of this green, it's definitely a green. Actually, it's a greenish yellow, maybe. It's more yellow than it is green. But it's highly, highly pigmented with a very special mica. And this got awfully dark back here, so I might be able to kind of bring that back a little bit. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's so pretty. I'm an intuitive artist, meaning I make my decisions as I go. I do have an idea. I'll say I never have an idea, and then I have to correct that, because I do have an idea when I go into the art. You can't hardly start without an idea unless you just pick up a paintbrush and splash the paint, and I often do that also. But I don't get upset when my ideas change. I used to. I used to think, if I can't get on paper what's in my head, what's the point of trying? But I've learned that when my heart and hands take over, and I just leave, I start with a thought, but don't get upset when it doesn't work out the way it's looking inside my thoughts and inside my brain and head. Then that is a good thing, because quite often your muse, your inner muse, has a lot more art sense than that left brain that's trying to tell you, oh, that won't look good, or I wonder why we have those things that tell us, oh, that's gonna look terrible, you can't do that. But we all have them. And don't give up. Just last week, I learned that some prejudices I carried, I was working with Vicki Ross, and some prejudices that I had about working with a product called Conti Crayon. I developed those prejudices way back in college 40 years ago, hated working with it, and I found myself telling her, oh, I hate that stuff. I hope you can show me how to use it so that I'll like it. Well, guess what? I was using it wrong, and no one told me any different, and all those years I carried that idea that I didn't like this. I couldn't do Conti Crayon. And I picked up Conti Crayon and used it the way Vicki showed me how to use it. If my art professors had given me that kind of instruction, I wouldn't have carried on the idea that I couldn't do it for 40 years. So if you ever try something and you feel like, well, I'm a failure at that, I can't do that, watercolor is the one that comes to mind when I think about this. Lots and lots of people think that they cannot do watercolor. They think it's too hard. It's hard to control. Pick it back up. Try some different methods. You might be surprised. It's kind of like I used to tell my son. I didn't force him to take a bite of anything ever. But we lived on a farm and we raised vegetables and we had the best food around. And just about everything that we ate came through my hands doing some kind of freezing, canning, drying, whatever. And what I would tell him wasn't, you have to take a bite of this to see if you like it, but I would tell him, maybe today you're old enough to like it, you might want to try it. And for us that worked because he tried all kinds of things, but he waited until he thought he was old enough. And I had explained to him that as we mature, our tastes change. So as you mature in art, your taste may change. You may find that something that you had a prejudice against for years and years, perhaps you were using it wrong. Perhaps your ideas about how to use it now are different. Perhaps you've learned more about it. I'm falling in love with the uses of Paverpol with each new project that I make because I learn more about the properties of it and how it wants to work. With Paverpol, I haven't found a way to make it completely smooth yet. And I'm learning to love the characteristics of the Paverpol and let it have that kind of texture. Let it do what it wants to do. Almost every art turns out better when you let the media work the way it wants to. At this point, I'm going to start adding some other colors besides the greens. Give it a bit more spark, a bit more interest, and the next color I'm going to use is Pink Azalea. It's in the Vivid Ultra-Metallic paints. I don't want that to look like it was put on them with a bottle, even though it was. So I'm going to spread it out a little bit on the edges. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. What beautiful color is that? I hope you can see how neat that face looks after the silk acrylic glazes started drying. And they dry really super fast. Okay, going to touch it with a bit of color here and there. This is Vivid, and I need to shake these because they've been sitting. There's a little skin on top always that you need to pull off after you've used it. I'm moving on to add more color with African Jade. It's another Vivid Ultra-Metallic from Color Art, and there's always a little skin on top of it. If I've used it before, you just pluck that off like you do with any acrylic. And I will be using this color and revisiting some of the other colors until I'm happy with the way things look. The Paverpol to me is just a miracle product. I am having so much fun mixing it with my paints, and these streaks of color are adding a lot of interest to this composition. Blue Bayou is one of the favorite colors that I use in several different color art products, including the silk acrylic glazes and the twinkling H2Os. It's a really pretty blue to go with these greens, and it will blend in and make other greens. This is turning out similar to many of my other compositions in that I often use cool colors with maybe one accent of a warm color, and the warm color I have here is pink azalea. I've noticed with the Paverpol, if you follow just a few basic rules about saturating the fabric and letting it, the fabric kind of drape and flow like it wants to, there's not a huge learning curve in this. I am very pleased with what's happening. Can't wait to try some more ideas that are in the back of my mind. It's not necessary to always paint your Paverpol pieces, but I sure am having a good time with this Goddess series and painting three-dimensional works. You should try Paverpol. The possibilities with it are endless. I have so many things in my mind that I just haven't gotten to yet. So stay tuned. Check out the description box below for all of the links to Paverpol and my social media links. Come and join my Studio ABC group. I'd love to have you there. These videos are easy to share on Facebook. All you have to do is click on the little share button and it'll give you a link to paste in. I'd appreciate any comments, a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.